They're currently being treated in the Old Palace Yard. Looking at the live shot there, where you can see the two yellow ambulances inside, that's Old Palace Yard. That's where the two injured are being treated. The man who is believed to be, I shouldn't say man because sex wasn't confirmed to me, but one person who's believed to have been the attacker, armed with a knife, who was shot by a police officer, and one police officer who we understand is suffering from knife-related injuries. In addition, the source has also confirmed to me that multiple people are injured on Westminster Bridge. That, we believe, is the result of having been struck by a vehicle. Multiple people injured. He could be no more specific than multiple people. Obviously, we've been seeing some numbers on social media, but we haven't been able to independently confirm that. But what we can confirm through this source at the moment is that multiple people were struck by a vehicle on Westminster Bridge. Now, this isn't confirmed, but is speculation from the source that that same vehicle then proceeded down onto Parliament Square and crashed into the railings just outside the main entrance to Westminster itself. The suspect attacker left the vehicle and managed somehow to get into Old Palace Yard, where he was confronted, attacked an officer, and then was shot. So, as I say, that information with regard to the same vehicle coming from Westminster Bridge is this, the sort of working theory that authorities are going on at the moment. That's not 100% confirmed, but what is confirmed from a source is that multiple people are injured on Westminster Bridge, having been struck by a vehicle. 2 people are now injured in Old Palace Yard. One believed to have been an armed attacker, someone armed with a knife who managed to get in beyond the gates and into Old Palace Yard, who was confronted by a police officer. That officer, we understand, was attacked, has suffered injuries, and along with the attacker is now being treated at the scene.
Mark, for now, thanks very much.
Let's talk to Alistair Bunkle, who we believe is closer to Westminster Bridge. Alistair, what can you see from where you are?
Yes, excuse me, my location. I'm just Waterloo Station side of Westminster Bridge, just south of the River Thames, looking at the bridge and up towards the Houses of Parliament. I've counted at least 15 ambulances or paramedics vehicles. There are a number of unmarked police cars here. The police are putting up cordons as we speak. There are paramedics running and walking up onto Westminster Bridge. Two ambulances have just left with their sirens going, probably perhaps heading towards St Thomas's Hospital, which is adjacent to this bridge. And there are a lot of people who, in this part of London, as you'd expect, would be milling around wondering what is going on. But this is a scene of sirens and blue lights and high-vis jackets as the emergency services lock down the area and they deal with whoever is injured up on the bridge.
Alistair, we're getting confirmation from London Ambulance as we speak to you that they have sent a number of ambulance crews to Westminster alongside their hazardous area response team as well. We have had reports of a number of injuries on Westminster Bridge. Can you give us any sense of what you can see from where you are?
I can't give you, it'd be wrong for me to give you any specifics about who is injured. I can't see anybody injured, but I mean, clearly the fact that there are, 4 ambulances now, I think I can count, on the bridge itself, including a fire crew, at least one fire crew, that is the indication that they are looking after and treating people on the bridge. And then the other ambulances, the Waterloo side of the bridge, are queued up, and it looks as though they are now waiting to be brought in as and when.
Alistair, thanks very much for
that. There's a couple of buses that have been stopped on the bridge. One of the duck tours, the distinctive yellow duck tours, guide buses that go around central London, they've been stopped on the bridge as well. So it looks as though if they weren't caught up in the instance as such, they were stopped from going anywhere and they were evacuated immediately.
And it's worth bearing in mind, isn't it, that actually St Thomas's Hospital, major teaching hospital, just on the south bank of the River Thames, opposite the Houses of Parliament, so medical help is literally that close. Just an apology as well, if any of our live pictures are picking out images which you may find distressing, you'll understand why we're keen to bring you a sense of what's happening there as quickly as possible. On the line now, Dr David Lowe, no, forgive me, Richard Tice, who is an eyewitness, somebody who saw part of what unfolded in Westminster this lunchtime. Richard, what did you see?
So, hi there, good afternoon. I came out of Westminster Tube, which was being locked down sort of immediately behind me, was ushered on to the bridge and looked across to the west pavement of the bridge, and literally north to south, I must have counted between 8 and 10 prostrate figures on the ground. My understanding from someone next to me was that a car or vehicle had driven along the whole pavement, knocking people over. And that's why there were many injuries, many people laying on the ground, starting to be attended to by paramedics. But literally from north to south, the whole length of the bridge, there were people on the ground who had clearly been injured by either a car or a vehicle. So pretty dramatic scenes, reports of gunshot fired and simultaneously grey and black vehicles arriving with special forces in masks and things. So pretty dramatic scenes, and hopefully people are no more than injured.
We don't know at this stage, Richard, but there are reports suggesting anything between 2 and 12 people were injured on the bridge. Which number seems close to the reality of what you saw?
I definitely counted at least 8 people, the length of the bridge, on the ground being tended to, from north to south along the whole length of the bridge. OK. Richard Tice, one of the many people who saw these events unfold in Westminster today. Thanks very much.
Just getting some more information from witnesses who described the event nearer to Parliament. This was the person carrying a knife. One witness has described seeing a middle-aged man carrying a knife and running. This is coming from the Press Association. Described as an Asian guy in about his 40s, carrying a knife about 7 or 8 inches long, running through those gates towards Parliament, being chased by police.
Well, look, if you are just switching on, this might be an appropriate moment just to draw breath and recap on what's happened. Around about 30 minutes ago, first reports came in initially of loud bangs, 4 loud bangs in the Westminster area. Shortly thereafter, we learned that Parliament had been suspended and was in a state of lockdown. You can still see at the bottom of the frame of that picture that you're looking at, which is overlooking Parliament Square, the statue of Winston Churchill and all the rest of it. You can see parked up there the air ambulance, which arrived pretty smartly. There's another picture showing from a different orientation that air ambulance on the ground, some of the police vehicles. Parliament Square now by this stage cleared of both traffic and the thousands of tourists and others who would ordinarily be there. The underground station, coincidentally, as you look towards it, now also closed, not because we believe of any particular terror threat there, but simply as a matter of procedure.
Also, this incident, as the camera pans along Westminster Bridge, that is also the scene of part of this incident. We just heard Richard Tice, their eyewitness, describing how he saw a number of people, some 8 to 10 people lying on the ground along that bridge, Westminster Bridge, busy at any time with people taking photographs of Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament. He said he believed that perhaps a vehicle had driven along the pavement of that bridge. Some speculation that could be the vehicle that then continued onto Parliament and carried the person with the knife. You can see the emergency services, many of them on that bridge now attending to those people. Let's cross to our correspondent Robert Nisbet, who's on the scene.
So we are on Millbank at the moment, Colin and Jane, and we are being pushed back again. They are expanding the radius of this area, this antiseptic area, as they continue their investigation and try to get as many emergency vehicles into the area as possible. We can see as we walk alongside here, and we're walking parallel to the Thames, we can see Westminster Bridge and all of the double-decker buses that are along there, obviously stop still in between those double-decker buses. You can see the pulse of blue flashing lights as more emergency vehicles now race down Millbank and through the tape to get there as quickly as possible. Just a quick recap of how we heard about it, and to give you a little spot of geography here. Millbank is this connective road that links the offices to the Houses of Parliament here. Most of the journalists are housed along here, and we were alerted to the fact that something was happening by a single tweet from one journalist. Everybody came running out, as you can imagine, into a scene of chaos, of people running in the opposite direction as police were trying to force people, expel them as quickly as possible out of the area, including dozens of workers who were working on the road around Parliament Square. Then, as they were starting to pull the plastic tape across to keep the area safe, we started hearing the blades of a helicopter, and we saw a red air ambulance land in Parliament Square just as the first information was coming out of what had occurred on Westminster Bridge. And we seem to be getting two lots of information from people who were on the bridge, where it appears that car was mounting the pavement and trying to mow people down, and then also from journalists who were inside Parliament at the time, who saw the attack, as we understand it, on a policeman by the knifeman, who was then shot dead. Now you see the chaotic aftermath of an event such as this, with tourists just wandering around here looking fairly bemused, as you can see, as police try to seal off the area, and the press now being pushed right back to Vauxhall Bridge, trying to keep this area as clear as possible, presumably to allow those emergency vehicles and police crews to get in there as quickly and as safely as possible. I'll throw it back to you now. I don't have communications with the studio.
Robert, thanks very much. Just want to stress at this point that there is a huge amount of material that's coming in. You can imagine this is an area that is an absolute media hub. Lots of people with mobile phones capable of taking pictures, journalists, holidaymakers, commuters, office workers, civil servants, all the rest of it. Some of it is I think reasonable to say, distressing. And I want to warn you about the picture we're about to show you, but we think it may help tell part of a story that's emerging. This is a still image simply showing somebody prostrate on the ground before medical attention has reached them. We've partly blurred the image, but we think it may help explain at least part of what's been happening on Westminster Bridge itself. River Thames just at the top of the frame as you see it, and that, if memory serves, is part of Westminster Bridge just as it abuts the Palace of Westminster complex itself. Now, whether that's an individual who's been hit by a fast-moving vehicle, then flipped over the wall, perhaps somebody who was seeking simply to jump out of the way of a fast-moving vehicle, but an image taken in the moments before the emergency services arrived. They are now there in great numbers.
If you're just joining us here on Sky News, there has been a serious incident outside the Houses of Parliament in London. Our correspondent David Bowden is here with us in the studio. David, just remind us of the facts as we know them now.
Well, we have what appear to be two separate incidents, but we have from a contact of Mark White, our Home Affairs correspondent, an official source saying that the two incidents are probably linked because it looks as though a man described again as a middle-aged man armed with a knife some 7 or 8 inches long, it appears drove a four-wheel drive vehicle across Westminster Bridge, mounted the pavement, ploughed into a number of people. Another witness told us anywhere between 8 and 10 people that he had seen lying on the ground, injured, then drove the same vehicle, we now believe, into the railings of the Palace of Westminster, which is literally just round the corner, and attempted to get into the actual grounds of the Palace of Westminster itself. There, he was stopped by police officers. He stabbed a police officer, and then he himself was shot and is now injured. Both the police officer who was knifed by this man is being attended to by paramedics, as is the assailant who was shot by other police officers. Now, whether or not this is the timeline as it unfolded, or whether or not, as we heard from another witness, there was potentially two separate events, and one of the men who was driving this vehicle got out and attempted to run away, and was fired at by police. They may well, in fact, be the same person. They may be two separate individuals. If they're the same person, it looks as though this situation is now contained because that person is injured, has been shot, and is being tended to by paramedics. If there were two people, then potentially a second person is still out there on the run. But I stress this is unfolding as we speak. Clearly, it is a major incident. Clearly, a number of people have been injured at the very least. And again, we get this idea, if it does turn out to be a terror attack, that essentially low-tech can become very high impact, as happened, of course, in both Nice and Berlin, in other places.
David Bowden, in terms of what's happening in Parliament, we know that Parliament has now been suspended for the day. We also know that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are both safe. We believe that the Prime Minister was in the Houses of Parliament when it happened.
We can talk to a Conservative backbencher who I think saw the Prime Minister being taken away. Of course, Prime Minister's questions, packed chamber, 4 p.m. queues. Andrew Bridgen, MP, joins us now. Andrew Bridgen, welcome to you. What did you see?
Well, we were just on a division, so a vote on the Lord's amendments to the pensions bill, the first of a series of votes. I was actually very close to going through the lobby voting just behind the Prime Minister, and the first I realised something was happening was when her security detail, we knew we had a series of votes, just came and spoke to the Prime Minister, and she moved away very quickly. She was taken to her car in Speaker's Courtyard, and then the security detail got their automatic weapons out and then moved off and took the Prime Minister out of Parliament via the House of Lords end.
Andrew, what was her reaction? What was the demeanour of the officers? Was it done in a calm way? Was there a sense in which this was frenetic, working to a plan? What was the feeling that you got?
They were professional, but it was obvious from their demeanour that this was not a drill and something serious had happened. I've never seen the Prime Minister moved away by the biggest security plainclothes security policeman I've ever seen, put his arm around her and took her very, very quickly away. And we could see that she was taken to her car. Automatic weapons were produced by the security detail, and she was very, very rapidly moved to safety, away from the incident. We're currently all on lockdown now in the House of Commons, and I believe that security are going through and just trying to check to make sure there's no other assailants.
And when we talk about being under lockdown, Andrew Bridgen, what are MPs and peers doing? Are they simply waiting in their offices? They've left the chamber. What's going on?
I think everyone's actually... Well, we've actually been insulated from it effectively inside the chamber. I think everyone's just gathered around TV screens waiting to actually get an idea of actually what was going on outside, which I think is we're getting an idea of that now, aren't we?
We are. And just to reinforce this point...
Obviously, our thoughts are really with the police officer who appears to have been injured, and it just shows what an important and potentially dangerous job that they do protecting our Parliament and our democracy.
Indeed. Andrew Bridgen, could you just give us a sense of the significance of Parliament being suspended? I mean, clearly it was a necessary precaution given what we understand was happening outside, but sum it up for us if you can.
Well, I think as a parliamentarian, we know that this is a high-risk environment, that it's a clear potential terrorist target for various groups. And even knowing that and coming to work every day and seeing the security, it's still a bit numbing when it actually happens. It is slightly surreal here in Parliament at the moment. I mean, it's not unexpected. It's almost an inevitability that someone will try something like this against our Parliament, the mother of all parliaments, but it is still quite surreal when it's actually happening.
Andrew Bridgen, MP, thanks very much.
Well, more information coming in all the time. We're seeing some images coming to us from MPs who are inside Portcullis House, which is a building which overlooks Westminster Bridge. It's a building where a lot of the MPs have their offices and they walk from Portcullis House across the road to Westminster Bridge, the route that this vehicle does appear to have taken. You can see there an aerial view of Westminster Bridge where the ambulance services are attending to a number of people who appear to have been mown down on that bridge by a vehicle which it is believed then continued on on to Parliament. Let's just remind ourselves of what happened in the last hour as Parliament was suspended as this gunfire was heard.
It's clear that the advice from the police and the Director of Security is still that the chamber should remain in lockdown. I think, as most colleagues will realise, a number of right honourable and honourable members are also in other parts of the estate or off the estate, and for obvious reasons are unable to be present for business. There have been conversations through the usual channels. I hope the House would agree that in the current circumstances it would not be right to continue with today's business. Discussions between the usual channels will take place to ensure that the business that has been interrupted can be rescheduled for another mutually convenient date. And I know, Mr Deputy Speaker, that you will want to keep the House, although we remain locked down here, informed about any news that comes through from the security authorities. But in view of what I sense to be the mood of the House and the situation in which we find ourselves, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is, this House do now adjourn. As many of the other opinions say aye? Aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. What I would go on to say is, as the moment I get any information, I will share it with everybody. I'm waiting for that, any more information to come through. Just to rest assured, we'll keep you informed what advice we're going to give as well. So please, let's just make the best we can of this horrible situation. But I will reassure you, as soon as I get something, I will come back to you. We can't go anywhere for the moment, so please, just let's see what we can do.
Well, let's bring in our Home Affairs correspondent, Mark White, who is in Westminster for us. Mark, in terms of what's happening in the House of Commons at the moment, we know that the Prime Minister was there, that she was taken away quickly, she is safe. The Press Association are reporting that the police are going through the Houses of Parliament floor by floor.
Yes, I mean, that's a standard protocol when you're dealing with an incident like this that on the face of it appears to look like a terrorist incident that is unfolding outside Westminster and indeed within the palaces of Westminster. So the police absolutely have to check out this area. They have to put in a sterile cordon around the area and make sure that there are no other people who may be linked to the attack, and by that I mean no other attackers. The information that I've just been speaking to a source again, so the information that they now have, their working assumption is this is one incident, but it has been broken down into three component parts. First of all, a vehicle that has mounted the pavement on Westminster Bridge and collided with a number of pedestrians on that bridge. Now, of course, we've seen from our helicopter aerials those user-generated videos as well of people clearly injured. Some reports suggesting up to a dozen people potentially on Westminster Bridge. I've just been told by this source of multiple casualties and no definitive number put on that. But the next element of this unfolding incident was the vehicle involved in the attack on the bridge careered down into Parliament Square and then smashed into the railings at the front of the Houses of Parliament. And in doing that, I understand that there are further casualties on the pavement there just by the railings at Westminster Bridge. Now, the information that our source has is that the attacker, one attacker at this moment that we know of, left the vehicle, confronted police officers, managed to get in to the Old Palace Yard at Westminster, just beyond the main gates there, where you often see the Prime Minister's convoy going in and out. Into the Old Palace Yard, was then confronted by a police officer there. We understand that a police officer has been stabbed, confirmed by our source, and that colleagues of that officer opened fire and shot the attacker. Now, at this stage, we're just told that both the police officer and the attacker have been injured, and no further details on that. But again, images that we've seen from the area within the Old Palace Yard indicate a couple of people within there, one lying on the ground, one sitting up, and both being treated by paramedics at the scene. So we're talking about one incident from the information that we're getting from this source, but in three component parts: the mowing down of people on Westminster Bridge, the vehicle then speeding down into Parliament Square and crashing into the fence, the metal fence outside the Houses of Parliament, causing, we're told, some more casualties there. And then the incident inside where one alleged attacker left the vehicle armed with a knife, headed into the Old Palace Yard, confronted by police officers, attacked and stabbed one of those officers, and then was shot by colleagues of that injured officer.
Mark, thanks very much.
Well, if you are just switching on, we'll try and recap some of the latest developments on this story. The police are now saying that they are treating this attack as a terrorist incident until, quote, we know otherwise. That's the latest from the Metropolitan Police. Robert Nisbet, our correspondent in Westminster, can join us now with a view from where he is. Robert.
Well, Colin, as you would imagine, a huge amount of police activity. We're at the end of Lambeth Bridge. We're standing on Millbank, which leads down to the Palace of Westminster down there. We've also got a pretty good view of Westminster Bridge, and we can see there all of the double-decker buses that are obviously now stationary, in between them flashing lights visible there. What the police are trying to do here now is obviously get to the scene as quickly as possible, as well as remove people from the scene as well. There are still some obviously quite shocked people stumbling around, not quite sure what is going on, some of them clearly tourists, but also a lot of reporters around here as well. A number of them, including Sky News, based just a little bit further down Millbank, and we heard very swiftly about what had happened and came running out to be confronted by the scene of people running away from Parliament up Millbank towards the bridge here. We also, just a few minutes after we came out of the building, saw a silver Jaguar move at speed away from the Parliament and then down Great Peter Street, just down by the side, just off Westminster. We now believe that the Prime Minister, Theresa May well have been inside of that car, and this was her speedy evacuation from the scene. So now what is happening? I mean, to add to what Mark has been saying there, that obviously there is the immediate response to treat those people that are still lying injured at those various pressure points. So on the bridge where the car apparently mounted the pavement, but also at that railing where the car crashed into the railing, as well as in Old Palace Yard itself. So there is the treatment of those people, but also there is an attempt now to gather evidence and just try to piece together what happened. And to that end, they want as many of us, reporters with cameras, as far away as possible as they carry out their work. But there are still people inside these buildings along here, along Millbank, who are trapped inside. They have been told that they can't come out. And so therefore this is still very much, of course, an active crime scene as they try to piece together what has happened. We did just see within the last few minutes, Colin, an ambulance that came past here with police, a police escort at the front and at the back, and there is speculation among some of us here at the press as it was going past whether that potentially was the attacker or perhaps someone involved in it, because those police were clearly guarding the ambulance as it left the scene. So as we hear sirens coming from almost every direction, it seems, still obviously an ongoing situation. Now there's a fire engine that's coming down through here. That's the first one we've seen of those, but obviously considerable activity from ambulance and police cars as well.
Robert, for now, we'll say thank you.
A couple of updates we can bring you on this story, reaction coming into it from across the world, and Sean Spicer, President Trump's press officer, has announced that the President has been briefed on the situation in the UK and is continuing to monitor and be updated on the situation. In terms of the number of emergency services that we are seeing there, the air ambulance parked on Parliament Square opposite the Houses of Parliament. We've also seen a number of ambulances on Westminster Bridge. London Ambulance Service is asking people in the area, please only call for an ambulance in a genuine emergency. It is using a great number of resources in the centre of London at the moment. We
can talk to our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, who's in Westminster now. Mark, There is a working theory as to what's happened here, but obviously, I'm just seeing, for instance, that the police presence at the end of Downing Street's been beefed up. Obviously, the authorities are working to a plan based on the idea they do not know yet whether this is completely finished.
Well, of course, they know from past terrorist incidents, and at the moment Scotland Yard have confirmed this is being treated as a terrorist incident until they know otherwise. But they know the pattern with many other terrorist incidents that we've seen in the past, including, of course, London in 7/7, and again a couple of weeks later on the 21st of July 2005, where you had multiple incidents that unfolded. Now, it may be that this is just a single incident and that's where it stands, but the police will, of course, take no chances, and that's why you're seeing, especially around central London, crowded areas now, an enhanced police presence to make sure that they can do as much as possible to be there should the worst happen. Now, I can confirm to you, Colin, from a source that counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers have now arrived on scene. Now, these CTSFOs, as they're called, are the elite of the SCO-19 firearms unit. They are specifically trained to deal in countering terrorism incidents. Just on Sunday, I was down on the River Thames at an exercise that the counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers were involved in. There, the scenario was boarding one of these riverboat pleasure cruisers with apparently the scenario was hostages on board. They train for this regularly. Clearly, they have been dispatched to the scene. What they are doing at the moment is helping in this area search of the Houses of Parliament. So you can see, of course, there from the images, that is one of the HeliMed helicopters that was down there on the Green in Parliament Square, which is just lifted off with one of the injured. Now, what we don't know at this stage, we know, of course, that both the alleged attacker and the policeman were being treated at the scene. It may be that one or other, or indeed both of them, could be on board that helicopter, but also we're hearing reports, of course, of multiple injured on Westminster Bridge. Now, if you're talking about very seriously injured people, they may have medevaced them by helicopter as well. One of the good points in terms of geographically, as you mentioned before, Colin, you have got St Thomas's Hospital just across the River Thames there. It is a major trauma unit and well able to deal with an incident like this, but it is an incident that's still unfolding in terms of casualties. You are still seeing injured being treated at the scene by members of the emergency services, paramedics, fire officers. You can see at the scene there as well, and many police now taking up positions to guard. As I was saying, these counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers are taking part, we understand, in a systematic search of the Houses of Parliament, because although we believe from the reports that we're getting, and certainly from what a senior source was able to tell me, that there was one attacker, they can't take the chance that there was just one attacker. These incidents, by their very nature, are fast-moving and very chaotic. It's possible that there may be other people, and that's why you've got this systematic search now of the Houses of Parliament with these counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers and other firearms officers, armed response vehicle officers. They're all being brought in now to the centre of London to help out in what will be a major search. And unfortunately, until they deem that Rabbit Warren, which are the palaces of Westminster, the rooms within the palaces of Westminster, are fully checked, many of the offices within that building will remain on lockdown, and that may mean MPs, members of the Lords, other offices having to remain in situ until they are eventually allowed to go. But I'm sure people will be very understanding that this incident is unfolding here.
White for now. Thanks very much, Mark.
Well, we've got a lot of people down on the ground there. Let's talk to Alistair Bunkle, who is very close to Westminster Bridge, where there are a number of people still receiving medical treatment. We can see from our aerial pictures, Alistair. What are you able to tell us?
Yeah, I should say, Jane, just as you come to me, they look as though they might be extending the cordon, so bear with us if we do have to leave you or they move us. But I'm going to bring in Finn here, who's a student who lives in halls of residence nearby. Now, you didn't actually see the incident itself, but you were on the scene minutes afterwards, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. I live in the student accommodation minutes away from the south side of Westminster Bridge. I walked out to go to university, and I think someone my age came up to me and said there's been a terrorist attack on the bridge. And so I ran over and I walked up to the bridge. So I wanted to know what had happened, and unfortunately, the scenes were pretty terrible.
Can you, within the bounds of decency, tell us what you did see?
I saw 3 to 4 people, roughly, who had been hit by a car and some car parts on the road and stuff.
You're pretty sure they'd been hit by a car?
Yes, yeah, that was the conclusion that I made, based on what I'd spoken to people there as well. People were talking. There was a man who works at a souvenir shop, and he...
OK, look, Finn, I'm just going to stay with...
Sounds like the sound disappearing from Alistair Bunkle's camera. This might be an opportune moment to recap what's happened so far and what we can officially say, and also let you know what other people are saying too. It was 18 minutes to 3 o'clock on the day of Prime Minister's questions. The Prime Minister was still in the Houses of Parliament when first reports came through of a number of loud bangs in the Westminster area. As we've been reporting since then, the police have drawn the conclusion, or at least they're saying tentatively, that it has the makings, what then unfolded, of a terrorist attack. They are not confirming that at this stage. Parliament was quickly suspended, as we've been told a few moments ago. Now a painstaking process involving dozens of armed police officers is underway to make sure that Parliament itself, currently on lockdown with MPs and peers confined to that building, is currently underway. Every single room, we're told, will be searched as a matter of caution at this stage. There's been an air ambulance on Parliament Square itself. The underground station at Westminster has been closed. Again, we believe, as part of a procedure that's been adhered to at a time like this, rather than acting in response to any particular terror event at Westminster Station. The Prime Minister, we heard from one Tory backbencher, Andrew Bridgen, who saw the Prime Minister in the lobbies, voting in the lobbies, and then been approached by initially plainclothes officers who ushered her away with their guns at the ready. We understand she's entirely safe, and probably, though we're not sure, back at Downing Street, which has seen the number of guards at the end of Downing Street increase substantially too.
You're seeing the pictures at the moment of Westminster Bridge, where we do believe there are a number of people who were injured who are still on the bridge. The emergency services are there. It is very, very close to St Thomas's Hospital, just the other side of the bridge. Mercifully, emergency services were able to get to the scene very, very quickly. But you can see that there is still a great deal of activity there. Police have closed this entire area now, asking people to avoid the entire area. Ambulance service are also saying people, please do not phone an ambulance in central London unless it really is a genuine emergency. Our correspondent Robert Nisbet was one of the first on the scene down there this afternoon. Robert, what can you see now?
Well, now, Jane, as you can tell here, we are being kept at some distance. Every now and again we hear this as the police try to move the cameras and the journalists out the way for another emergency vehicle to come on through. Of course, what you have here, Jane, just to anybody who doesn't know the geography of where we are in London, is that this is a considerably busy place, not just for the business of Parliament, but also a number of tourists come on through. You see the communication here between some of the police officers as another ambulance goes behind us here. But a number of tourists in the area, as well as thousands, of course, of office workers who work here. There were also just a bunch of school children who were looking completely bemused at the end of this road. They wanted to get down here to catch their bus, but they were being pushed back the other way. And, of course, now that all of this area is being sealed off, you're getting the pushback, and traffic now, of course, is building up in all of these nodal points alongside the River Thames. But there is still that crisp edge you can feel at times like this, which I felt in Paris at both the terrorist attacks I covered, that all the police, all the emergency services are just tense, and everybody around them, of course, that tension is radiating out as they try to keep this area clear for emergency vehicles to come in. We've seen a number of ambulances come out and a number of police vehicles come in, and within the last 15 minutes or so we saw one ambulance, as I was mentioning earlier, with a police escort either side, and there's been some speculation here as to whether that potentially was that ambulance contained perhaps someone of interest there. Another helicopter directly above us, that may well be one of the crews that is catching the images of what is happening on the bridges beneath us as well. So obviously a huge amount of activity here as the police try to establish what has happened, keep the area secure, and also get those injured people in and out, as well as, of course, conducting the initial stages of an investigation to try to piece together what has happened.
Robert, thanks very much. As you're speaking to us, more and more images are coming into us. The Metropolitan Police are asking if anybody has footage of the incidents, please pass it on to them. A great deal is circulating on social media as well, though.
We are sifting through them, and we are, as judiciously as is possible, while telling you clearly a very dramatic story, aware of obvious sensitivities at a time like this. So here is a number of the pictures amidst the many that are currently circulating, which give you a sense of what has happened this lunchtime on Westminster Bridge, as we believe a 4x4 car has been driven at speed along the pavement heading towards the Palace of Westminster, where it then crashed into the gates. If you know that area, in fact, just the previous picture, if you know the area, you'll know there are huge concrete blocks designed to stop any vehicle actually mounting the pavement. It's our understanding that it's gone along the pavement, according to eyewitness reports and our sources, quoted by Mark White, our Home Affairs editor, that it's then carried on down Westminster Bridge towards Big Ben and then gone round, we imagine, some of those concrete blocks and crashed into the gate. So a number of people clearly receiving ad hoc medical attention. This is very close to St Thomas's Hospital, a major accident emergency unit just metres away from where all this was unfolding. In fact, let me share with you a statement from London Ambulance Service Deputy Director of Operations, Pauline Cramner, who has said, "We were called at 2:40 p.m. to Westminster Bridge to reports of an incident with the first crew arriving within 6 minutes," underlining the point we're making. We have sent a number of resources to the scene, including ambulance crews, London's Air Ambulance and our hazardous area response team. We're working closely with other members of the emergency services at the scene, with our priority being to ensure patients receive the medical help they need as quickly as possible. We have declared a major incident, and our priority is to assess patients and ensure that they are treated and taken to hospital as soon as possible. Closes by saying we are very busy dealing with this incident. We would ask the public to only call us in a genuine emergency.
There is another image that we can show you. I should warn you that it may be distressing to some viewers, but it is somebody who's clearly affected by what happened this afternoon. We believe these are the steps. You can see the River Thames just to the top left of the screen there. This very much looks like somebody who was on Westminster Bridge. Whether or not they were hit by a car and perhaps thrown over or fell down the steps, we don't know, but this is somebody who was affected earlier before medical treatment arrived. This is the latest footage we can bring you live in Westminster of what is happening there on the ground. Huge number of emergency services there on the ground at the moment. The area being evacuated, the tube not running in that area as well. The tube station's been closed. Police asking people to stay away and trying to clear that area as effectively as they can.
Well, as we continue to look at these pictures, let's go back to our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, who can reflect, Mark, if it's not too early to do so, on the fact that this is one of the most sensitive in terms of the terror threat locations pretty much in the world, and all necessary precautions had been taken to prevent a range of different types of attack.
Yes, the police regularly tell us, and we report regularly on the threat that's facing the UK. The terror threat currently stands at its second highest level. That is severe, meaning an attack is highly likely. The highest level is critical, which means that effectively an attack is underway. We haven't heard from the Home Office as yet as to whether that threat level is likely to rise or whether they think this may be just a one-off and it can stay at severe. But in those briefings that we get regularly, they stress and we're almost weary at times of the constant stressing of the security services about the threat that we face. And there is a sense, because there have been no incidents really of any significance since really the attack on Lee Rigby a few years back when he was killed outside the barracks in Woolwich, that the police and security services are on top of everything. And to a large extent, they are. They've thwarted 13 terrorist attacks in this country in the past 4 years. But they also stress constantly that it only takes one incident, one person that they might not be across who can launch these fairly unsophisticated attacks. They can be horrific, as clearly we are seeing by the nature of what is unfolding here. But in terms of the technology and the plotting and planning that's involved, they are fairly low in sophistication. All you need is a car and a knife. Anybody can go into their own kitchen and pick up a lethal knife. So it's very difficult at times to guard against an individual that might want to cause such destruction and chaos in the centre of a busy city if they're so minded to do that. They do monitor, and they are aware of about 3,000 individuals in this country who have the kind of extremist views that they may well enact that out in violence. But they have to make judgment calls all of the time. They have to prioritise about who they should devote a lot of time to in terms of monitoring. They just don't have the resources to monitor everybody all of the time. And sometimes those judgment calls mean that an individual that's known to them might not be monitored properly, or it may be an individual who's not known to them. We will find out that kind of information in the days ahead. What we are now witnessing is very much an unfolding incident that Scotland Yard have confirmed they are treating as a terrorist incident outside the Houses of Parliament and indeed inside the grounds of the Houses of Parliament. It might be worth, Colin, just confirming to you what my source, senior security source, has told me this afternoon in terms of the events. It happened, first of all, on Westminster Bridge with a vehicle that ploughed into a number of pedestrians who were on that bridge for a considerable way, if not most of the way across Westminster Bridge. That vehicle had mounted the pavement and smashed into a number of pedestrians who are being treated, some of them still being treated and triaged on the bridge by paramedics and other members of the emergency services. The vehicle, a 4x4 Hyundai, we understand, then at speed came into Parliament Square and then crashed into the perimeter fence around the Houses of Parliament. Now, at that point, we're told it caused more injuries to people who were on the pavement at just outside the palaces of Westminster. Now, at this stage, we're told they believe there was one attacker. That alleged attacker left the vehicle armed with a knife, managed to wrestle his way through police officers and into Old Palace Yard, just beyond the main gates into the palaces of Westminster. He was tackled by a police officer who then sustained knife injuries. And then one of that police officer's colleagues, a member, we're told, of the Diplomatic Protection Group, who are tasked with guarding the palaces of Westminster and who are armed, that officer shot this attacker multiple times. Now, at this stage, we've been told that both the police officer and the alleged attacker are injured. We've no more information on the extent of their injuries, but they, again, have been treated at the scene. Within the last few minutes, we saw a HeliMed helicopter leave the grounds of Parliament Square, presumably heading to one of the major trauma units, maybe St Thomas's Hospital, just on the other side of the river. Other injured have been taken by these road ambulances that are now there in significant numbers. London Ambulance Service have described this as a major incident.
OK, for now, Mark will say thank you. And just to underline what Mark was saying there about his working theory that we're talking about somebody with a vehicle and a knife who is able to generate headlines around the world, the US State Department is in Washington says it is closely following the, quote, concerning situation outside the UK Parliament.
Let's talk to Adam Holloway, MP, who is inside the Houses of Parliament, which has been on lockdown since this incident happened 18 minutes to 3 this afternoon. What was the first you knew of it, Mr Holloway?
I beg your pardon?
What was the first you knew of it?
The first I knew of it, I was going to vote, and the parliamentary police very rarely shout. They were shouting to people to come down an escalator. As I got to the bottom of the escalator, a wave of people were running towards me. So I obviously returned to my office, to my staff, and we're now in Norman Shore South. We're all thinking of the injured people and marvelling at the police and ambulance service response and staying in our offices with the doors shut.
How fearful are you? The police are obviously inside, they're searching the building.
We're not fearful at all. We've got every confidence in the police. We're watching Sky News and they seem to be doing extremely well.
The fact that this person appeared to be able to get inside the perimeter of the Palace of Westminster is concerning, though, is it not? We look at the safety procedures that are in place in Westminster, the bollards that are on the road just outside the building. It will raise questions as to how on earth this was able to happen.
You know, it's very difficult when you live in a democracy and you have a place where, you know, thousands and thousands of people work, move in and out of every day to secure absolutely everything. I mean, you know, there are obvious things that can always be improved, but it's a balance between, you know, access and security. And, you know, let's be fair to the cops. I mean, that was a pretty impressive response by them, given that they didn't know that was coming.
In terms of security at Westminster, to those who don't know, just talk us through what kind of security you have to go through on a daily basis.
You know, I just think that kind of thing is pretty unhelpful to discuss on, you know, satellite TV.
OK, fair enough. But what I'm trying to get at is that there is an exhaustive security procedure, is there not? It's certainly a well thought through process.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you know,
Land in the middle of the road. Then I had to stop and then stop the other vehicles.
And did you get a view of the driver at all?
No, because as we were just passing here, the driver overtook me straight away.
Yeah.
So I don't know who was in that car.
And you said he stopped the lights. Was the lights on red when he first?
No, the light was red at the beginning, so I had to slow down to wait the light.
Yeah.
As soon as the light changed to the amber, the car started speeding up straight away.
Yeah.
30 miles an hour between here and the traffic light. You cannot drive at 30 miles an hour.
Yes.
Then straight away went to the kiosk and there was people on the first bridge. And the second one in the middle bridge, there's a sign in there. And the third one is by the yellow board. So there is a man just laying down there.
So how many people do you think he hit? What did you see him hit?
What I have seen it on my own eyes, between 6 and 7 people laying down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were they on the pavement when he was zigzagging into them?
They were just walking as normal, and the first hit, even the second people, and the third time he was doing, no one realised it. So as he's done it in and out, zigzag.
Yeah.
And it was a quick and less than 10 seconds between.
Yeah. And then what happened to the car? Did he just carry on then over Westminster Bridge?
The car continued to drive all the way down, but down the bottom of the bridge there is a 2-lane, so that there is a bus on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
So it just continued between the bus and the pavement, and there was over 100 people on the pavement. Just like we're standing here now.
Yeah.
The car drove to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then anything can happen. I don't know if people landed on the river. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the traffic was even slow moving. I don't know if the cars and hit other people while they're running away from this car. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can do is just stop in the middle of the bridge and try to stop the vehicle coming, and then try to assist them and call the police and ambulance.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can do.
And how badly injured was the person that you saw?
And to be honest, the one I have seen, there is one person who wasn't moving at all.
Yeah.
And the only thing I heard from the ambulance and all that is a conscious. I don't know after that.
And did I hear you say that was a man?
I think it's a man that was laying down on the floor.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's passed away or, but the ambulance they were saying is conscious and can we take it? So I don't know what happened after that.
Do you know what was the man's approximate age? Was he?
No, I have no idea because I cannot focus on that one.
No.
The only thing I can focus is my behind, so the vehicles not to cross it.
Yes. Yeah,
so that's the only thing I can assist it, and I'm only one person. But luckily within a minute or two, so then the first ambulance and the police started running. Yeah.
Were they quite quick on the scene?
We started because the first thing we panicked all of it. We didn't know exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
Then when I went to call to 99, usually you always get the answer.
Yeah.
So I had to wait about 30 seconds to be diverted, either the police or ambulance. Mm-hmm. Then after that, then I've been told yes, we know, and then there is police coming, ambulance coming. But literally within 2 minutes, they started rolling.
Yeah. And again, I mean, what's your reaction to all this?
And I don't know who's that person. a sick person or a terrorism. I don't know exactly who's that person, but you guys was watching the news, so you have to tell me who was the driver and what he was doing. So I cannot judge it until I listen to the news and find out the truth about that person. But at the moment, what I witnessed it is not something I wish for anybody. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you mind if I ask your age? Your name,
45.
And your name?
Ismail.
Ismailhassan.
Yes, love.
Do you mind just telling us what happened from the start? We just missed it.
I don't know if you want to roll it to your camera there, behind the van, the car parked there. And it's a 4x4 grey or silver. So I don't know why he parked the car there and what he was doing in the car. And then as I was waiting that green light to change, the car speeded up and passed me. That small shop after the traffic light, that's the first victim hit. Then I did not pay attention. I thought it was just only car swerved it. Second after a few meters, and the third, then that's the time of collecting me on something bad is going on. They continue, but I don't know by the end of the bridge, I don't know what's happening. But there is a lot of people was on the pavement, and the car went straight.
How did it feel the moment when you saw this happen?
As soon as I notice something is going wrong, the only thing I can focus on, not them one, the only one in front of me. So then there is traffic was rolling, so I had to stop the traffic to focus that person on the floor. And then after that, then we have to panic and then try to call the police and ambulance and everything. Try to assist the people on the floor. There was people get away with it, they get harm. So then we have tried to help everyone in there, and then we have to call the police and ambulance. I hope everyone is okay. That's the only thing is, but it's something it's not our wish for anybody. Yeah. Good luck to you.
And then a medic arrived on a bike, and then ambulances arrived fairly quickly after that, and then the police started pouring onto the bridge. And at that point, we walked people off the bridge, and they put a tape around it.
Did you hear noises that sounded like gunshots?
I didn't know. I heard afterwards. I've heard people say that. I didn't hear that. I just heard the screaming.
And a little bit about yourself. Do you work here? Why were you in London?
No, I live in Wales and Somerset, and my daughter works here, and I've just come up to see a show with her tonight. And I was just kind of walking around.
And a mix of people on the bridge, people like you, people who work there, tourists.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really busy. In fact, I had to step off the bridge to get around a group of people who were coming towards me, and it was just after that when all the screaming started.
And how quickly did you see the emergency services respond?
There was kind of a lull. Obviously, I could see people were phoning them. And so until they arrived, we just tried to keep people away from the scene, and then they probably arrived within 5 or 10 minutes. And when they arrived in force, and they very quickly at that point, by the time I reached the end of the bridge, they'd started pulling tape across and ushering people off.
So it took over from you, trying to keep people from coming onto the bridge?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Stephen, thank you very much. Sorry to make you relive that. That sounds fairly horrendous. And it's interesting, Colin, that the people we saw who were running from the scene, it was almost like that they had competing impulses, one to film on their phones and one to run away, which is, I suppose, a sign of the times. A lot of people just holding their phones aloft, not really knowing whether to run or film. But a number of people obviously have captured the immediate aftermath of what happened, but a number of eyewitnesses clearly, who are processing what they saw, and I can be joined by another now. Excuse me, sir. Can I speak to you here? Were you near the scene when it happened?
I was with my wife near the Whitehall, and we heard 3 shots about the Parliament. And we intend to take a photo from the Parliament, so we walk through, and we see a scene with a car crashed on the Parliament and a person on the floor near the car, but I don't know what happened because I don't see directly the scene.
So that person was lying on the ground. They looked extremely injured.
Yeah. The person, I don't know what happened with her, because I don't see, but I see just a person like aside the car.
And what happened then afterwards? What was the reaction around this scene?
Afterwards, the policeman comes to the scene and isolate the area, and push the people through the garden and the Abbey, Westminster Abbey.
Right. So trying to push people back.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed
Okay.
for your time and explaining what you saw. So obviously a number of witnesses in this case, Colin, and what they do now is speak to all of these people, try to piece together what happened from some fairly vivid eyewitness testimony and obviously some fairly awful things that these people have witnessed as we ourselves try to put together some kind of narrative as to what has happened over the past few hours.
Robert, for now, thanks very much indeed. The Press Association reporting an announcement made in Parliament said there was a suspicious package in a vehicle and the bomb squad had been called, which halted a planned evacuation of Parliament.
Now, this is the image that we have of a vehicle which has crashed outside Parliament. We don't know if this is the 4x4. This is clearly not a 4x4 vehicle. But you can see smoke coming from the bonnet of that car and people being pushed back from the gates here outside the Houses of Parliament. Other images that are coming into us now are footage of the Prime Minister. We believe this is the Prime Minister's vehicle. Let's just give you these pictures. Here we go. Leaving the Houses of Parliament earlier. She was inside the House of Commons as this happened. We don't know exactly where the Prime Minister is, but we do know that she was removed safely from the building. Lewis Goodall, our correspondent, is in Portcullis House. Let's just bring you the latest we are getting, Lewis. One woman has died and a number of others have been hurt, including some with catastrophic injuries on Westminster Bridge. This is according to a junior doctor at St Thomas's Hospital. So this is coming now from a medic at St Thomas's Hospital, confirming one woman dead, a number of others have been hurt with catastrophic injuries in the incident on Westminster Bridge.
Well, this is now, as we already knew, if it is terror-related, it's an attack which is resulting in a number of injuries and now a fatality, according to a junior doctor who's been quoted. So not an official response at this stage. Lewis Goodall, our political correspondent in Westminster, can join us now. Lewis, what do you know?
Well, as you can see, we're just outside Parliament on the Portcullis House side. There are helicopters everywhere. We know the Prime Minister was sent back to in a car as an emergency away from Parliament shortly after the incident took place. As far as we're aware, members of Parliament are still locked down inside the chamber, not least because of the news that you were just reporting there about the possibility of a suspicious package in a vehicle. On the bridge just behind me, about an hour or so ago, we had a car which mowed down, we believe, around 5 people before the attacker went straight into, attempted to get into Parliament wielding a knife, and that's when he was shot. 2 people were then, a policeman was injured in that attack, and 2 people were received medical attention, believed to be the attacker and the policeman. Obviously, we haven't seen an incident like this for a very long time, not since the attack in London in 2005, and then subsequently the Rigby murder. But as you can see, people around me with cameras, helicopters everywhere. People apparently just across from me stuck in the London Eye, stuck in the wheel. So a degree of chaos here, but police moving us further and further along as they try and secure the area.
Lewis, thanks very much. Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the opposition, tweeting to say, my statement on the ongoing incident in Westminster, our thoughts are with the victims, their friends and families. And of course that has added poignancy as we learned within the past 2 minutes that, according to one junior doctor being quoted by the Press Association at St Thomas's Hospital, of course St Thomas's Hospital so close on the other side of the River Thames from the Houses of Parliament, that at least one woman has died and other people have suffered, quote, catastrophic injuries.
You can see on your screens now, this is the latest scene down there, the emergency services on the scene on Westminster Bridge, security services outside the Houses of Parliament. We also have a number of images that are coming into us from people who witnessed what happened today. A number of them are distressing. We're showing you them here on Sky News because this is a serious incident in the centre of London, and we think it is important to show you the reality of what has happened today. This is somebody who looks to have fallen or jumped from Westminster Bridge. These are the steps leading down from the bridge down to the river. This is also footage of people being treated on the bridge. It was some 6 minutes before the ambulance service arrived, according to London Ambulance Service. One of the witnesses there say there was what he described as a lull, clearly a large number of people going to the assistance of those who were injured on Westminster Bridge, which does appear to be the place where the largest number of casualties at the moment were. Talking to a witness who was on one of the London Transport buses a little earlier, about 10 minutes ago on Sky News, she may have been mistaken. She described hearing gunshots on the bridge. She then said that they saw a car ploughing into a number of people. She described it as a car appearing to go out of control. Another witness that we spoke to just a short time ago described how he was on the bridge. He heard people screaming. He saw bodies on the bridge. He also saw a body in the water. If the car had ploughed along a pavement, it would appear that people did try to get out of the way of that vehicle. The latest we are hearing from a medic at St Thomas's Hospital is that one woman has definitely died and a number of others have been hurt. And of course, we also know that there are casualties outside the Houses of Parliament, where this man that eyewitnesses say was brandishing a knife appeared to attack a police officer, and that is where the police shots were fired.
Amid those pictures we were just showing you was a still image, I think, of the Prime Minister's vehicle with a Land Rover just behind it. Significant, actually, is the fact perhaps that it was driving away from Downing Street, away from the Houses of Parliament. There is a plan, we presume, we're certain, aren't we, that would come into effect at a time like this. Mark White, our Home Affairs correspondent, has been talking us through how those plans have swung into action today. Mark, I think, can join us now to reflect on what we know so far. This already was a mass casualty event, Mark, and now a fatal one too, it seems.
Yes, that's right. I mean, in terms of that plan that you speak about, that is in action at the moment. So you have an effective lockdown within the palaces of Westminster as officers, firearms officers from the Specialist Counter-Terrorism Unit, CTSFOs, they're called, Counter-Terrorism Specialist Firearms Officers, are on scene and are conducting a systematic search, room by room, of the palaces of Westminster. Out of an abundance of caution, and also out of the knowledge that because of these incidents, they are chaotic and fast-moving by their very nature. And although they believe at the moment there is one attacker, there may be more, and they need to properly check out the palaces of Westminster. In addition to that, of course, they don't know whether this incident will remain a single incident or whether they could be connected incidents. We've seen in other terrorist attacks around the world that you would get multiple incidents unfolding at the same time or in close proximity to each other, both time-wise and geographically. And on that, we're told that the London Eye, that very prominent tourist attraction just across the River Thames from the palaces of Westminster, is also on lockdown at the moment as another search is carried out there. Taking you back to the palaces of Westminster, though, in terms of what's happening inside, there is also still a security alert outside with reports of a suspect package within the vehicle, that Hyundai 4x4 that crashed into the perimeter fence to the Houses of Parliament. That suspect package will need to be properly examined and made safe if there is any danger within that package itself. That will take a while. That's why we've seen the cordon at the palaces of Westminster extended regularly. You can see those officers on the right gesticulating again to that officer. I think that he wants people even further back. Clearly, if they are dealing with the potential of a suspect package, they want to make sure that all of the relevant bomb disposal teams can get there and that people are not within